What is going on? Section 128. We are live. I'm here with Juan Pablo JP Marquez. He's going to be helping me as Eric's out. Big shout out to you, Erik, if you're listening to us. This show is dedicated to you, man. You are basically the difference maker here. But JP is going to be talking to us a little bit about this big win that LAFC had in Texas, a place that is really hard to get points, and we were able to get them there. A bizarre game. So we'll talk a bit about all the what's happened there too, and focus on our midfield, which has been really very different between 2025 and 2026. So excited for the show. What's up, Vic? Thank you so much. The chat is alive. We're gonna be basically picking Juan Pablo's brain. You know, this guy is a scholar, but he's also a player. He plays still. I don't play anymore. So he has some very interesting perspectives on how LAFC has been basically changed from last year to this year. An insane beginning of a season for LAFC. But first, our friends from Fugazi, here's our intro. All right, JP, appreciate you coming. I had a microphone accident literally 30 seconds before the show started. So I'm holding my microphone stand as it collapsed in front of me 30 seconds before we went live. It's not going to stop you. How you doing, my friend? Good to see you. Welcome to section 128.
Good to be talking about the team. I haven't talked about the team in years, so it's definitely fun to talk LAFC again.
Now, bro,
Impressive
yeah.
start.
Yep. Sorry, there's a little bit of echo there. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Just impressive start. 4 out of 4. I think what helped us getting points in Houston was playing earlier in the season, not when the humidity is at its worst or when the storms are there later on in the year. So maybe even the playing field. But yeah, I mean, history matters, and historically we have not been able to get points there. So it's good to end this little cycle, 12-game cycle with everything jam-packed schedule we had. But it's good to go four for 4.
4 for 4, man. What a beginning of a season and a career as LAFC manager for Marc Dos Santos. So you were there filming the interview with me in preseason with Marc. So you had a chance to meet him face to face and got to hear about what he was planning already. So we got some flavor of what was coming in terms of who was going to play the 10, how he felt David Martinez played better on the inside. So comparing and going back to that time that you were there with me at the training facility, what were your thoughts then, right? And how are you seeing his philosophy evolve on the field?
I think what surprised me most and surprised everybody is Segura at left back. I think he hinted and he told the people that he expected to play with a 10 or with a creative player. He wanted that profile. So David Martinez is filling that. Boudry is gonna fill in for that, settle in. But nobody expected Segura at left back, which changes the shape as well, but it changed everyone's perspective on how we can attack and what he expects from our attack. So he expects a 10, and he expects our defenders to stay back and give the people and the players in front of him freedom to do what they do best. So I think there's less structure or more fluidity, I would say, going attacking, which we didn't see last season. I think it was a lot more pragmatic and a lot more structured, and he gives these guys a lot more confidence and freedom when attacking.
Definitely freedom, and I think that's been helping the young guys. And we'll evaluate some specific names in the midfield because I feel like if you look at some of the data and the stats, you start seeing kind of how some of the roles have changed. But you talked about some of the guys that are coming off the bench here, and this is a little bit of an off-scripted questions. I know we shared the agenda before the show since it's a live show, but who's losing space in your mind in this roster? And for me, it's going to be Nathan Ordaz. It seems to me that he's no longer sort of the focus of the young core. Do you agree, or is there anybody else that you think it's kind of at a danger of sort of losing relevancy under the Marc Dos Santos tenure, you would say?
I think it's going to be Ryan or Artem. I
Mhm.
think who can we integrate without changing too much of the style? Because it's very clear that he wants three center backs defending. He gives Palencia freedom to go up. And I
Mhm.
think Artem can fill that
Yes.
and can do the same thing on the left. And then you would switch Segura to right back. But that means you bench Palencia. And I think Palencia is a silent leader on the field. So, you know, the season is long. We will have to rotate. But in the near future, I think, like you said, Nathan is going to lose minutes because we have Schaufelberg that hasn't played. We have Tyler Boyd, who's been given confidence. We have Boudry and Martinez, who are elevating, the team. And then we have Jeremy Abobasi,
Mm,
who's a more traditional striker and a bit more
right.
experienced than Nathan. Granted, Nathan's been
Mhm.
scoring. I wouldn't say that he needs to be taken off. But when you're sitting behind Son and maybe Jeremy, when Jeremy comes in, that's what I'm most excited to see, because that's a traditional number 9. So does that mean Martinez gets relegated to the bench and we have Son, Denis on both wings? Because Son's best position is also on the wing, which we haven't seen
Mhm.
much of. So
Yeah.
that's what's interesting.
We'll talk about that because the Sonny evolution under Marc Dos Santos and what he's been asked to do, it's already very clear and eminent. You can see that compared to what he was doing last year. Although he got here in the middle of a season, so it's a little bit of the perspective. Now he has a whole preseason to work on, and you start to see what Sonny can bring, and it's very different from what he was doing under Cherundolo, right? So yeah, the thing about Martinez, and we'll analyze him, very closely as well, is he's been sort of gaining the most confidence, I would say, and the most opportunity among all these young names. So there's been certainly a change from we're always going to start Nathan Ordaz, right, to now starting David Martinez, a more explosive player, someone who can just create plays for you when you're bottled up, which is something we saw LAFC in several situations last year. And that was one of his comments to us, right? When we're stuck with the low block, how can we be more vertical? How can we be a little bit more dynamic? So I'll jump right into the first name that I want to analyze, which is Tim Tillman, someone that's been here for a long time. And if anything, his role has evolved and he's played everywhere on the field. And if you look at his heat map, which I'm not sure I'll be able to bring in here since I have to hold his microphone. But if you look at his heat map, it's basically inverted from last year. Last year, he was playing much more on the other side of the field, whereas now he's playing inverted. And what I find it that interesting to be is that he's not being asked to do as much defensive work as he was under Cherundolo, right? Do you agree there? What have you seen from Tillman, a guy that has been criticized heavily from everywhere at some point during his tenure at LAFC?
Yeah, I think he didn't help himself with his comments coming in. I think that set the tone.
Yeah.
And then, not winning CCL with, people maybe scapegoating him for a goal or whatever didn't help. And then when you lose finals and you lose big games, you need a scapegoat. And it seems as
Mhm.
though he was the scapegoat. But Tillman
Mhm.
has kept his head high,
Mhm.
has worked everywhere. He's essentially our Swiss Army knife. We've seen him as a false 9. We've seen him as a 10. We've seen him on the wing. So Cherundolo used him everywhere. And Marc Dos Santos sees no issue also asking him to change his profile. And Tillman, as crazy as it is fighting for a World Cup spot. There's no,
Oh,
I know it's crazy to say, but he has been called up, and the last thing that dies is faith. So that's on his mind. And if he's gonna work for a World Cup spot, then it's only gonna help LAFC because he's trying to do everything he
that'd be
can.
awesome.
He's gonna do everything he can to get a look.
That'd be awesome. I mean, he's playing at a high level, but again, he's been the same player. If you look at his output, his averages, like what he can and cannot do, it's the same guy. Been the same guy three three seasons now, 4 seasons with us. So he gives us continuity. He's a relatively cheap player, and again, in MLS, if you find these guys that are kind of playing for their next contract and are within range of the salary restrictions that we have, you got yourself a winner. So as much as we like to beat on him, I never feel like it should be the fault of, the second eight on your midfield that you lost the game. Maybe you should look up front and see how many goals some guy like Denis Bouanga scored on those finals, right? And I brought this up. He hasn't been really good in some of these finals. So that's kind of my mentality with Tim. He gives us everything you can get with a guy of his caliber, right? And now he's getting looks from the national team, which is really good. I think, it's a little bit of politics with his brother, right? But at the same time, it's good that he's getting some caps under his belt. It's pretty cool. And I'm happy to see a guy pop under Marc Dos Santos. I think he's the prime example of that. The other guy, which scored on the goal, scored our first goal, is once a G, always a G, Marc Delgado. So I don't think I've ever had an opportunity to ask you this, but in the context of this rivalry, how big has been Marc Delgado come to LAFC and do what he's doing? And if you can comment, what are you seeing from him this season that you maybe not have seen from him on past seasons, even with Greg Vanney as his coach?
I think he's Mr. Consistency. I think his game has never changed. He plays simple. He knows what he's good at, and he's never strayed away from it. He's the original Chivas USA player. So,
yeah, baby.
Yeah. So I think he's also playing more free. I think in his early interviews last year, going from Vanney's, winning his side in 2024, coming to us, Dolo, I think, restricted him or asked him to, just do this. And he didn't seem comfortable in interviews. He didn't seem like he was fully bought in. But, he's a professional and did his best. And, it worked. He's a seasoned vet in MLS. He's never going to, truly be in a downward slope. And I think now with the midfield being a little bit more free, he's back at what he likes to do best, or where he feels best on the field. So I think when players have confidence, they play best. And I think when teams win, players play better. So I think it's just a little bit of that, getting that freedom back, or being in a system that he likes or fully accepts. And then everything just follows. So
yeah,
good goal. That's a good goal as well. So.
It must be hard for any Galaxy fan to see his success with LAFC. I think if I was on the other side of this equation, I'd be devastated. And it's happened, right? Because you're a Liga MX fan, and I know this happened in other leagues, but it must hurt to see a guy that has had such a history there be such a successful player for LAFC.
I think Galaxy fans are okay with it because they saw him a full season thriving, and then he missed the penalty. So I think that was that evened it out for the Galaxy fans. So I think they made peace with that. They said, okay, you left, you looked good for a season, but you missed an important penalty. We'll forgive you. And I don't think Marquis wanted to leave as well, but he's a professional and he's made the black and gold.
Yeah, no, and he found a place. He's SoCal. He's SoCal for a long time, and staying here and having that continuity is key. And you've seen that. I'm from São Paulo, Brazil. There's 5 clubs there. In London, there's I think 8. So moving within a same geography is not uncommon, right? But it's special for our rivalry because we haven't seen much of it outside of some no-name players like Raheem the Dream. I don't know. It's just there've been other names, right? But not to this caliber. But we got to move on here, and because we have to talk about Elstakio being the player that probably gives everybody else the freedom that we've been talking about. We'll have a segment just on Elstakio, but I want to go to David Martinez as sort of the one guy on offense that we want to pick. Because I do believe Denis Bouanga is just being Denis Bouanga. And has been told to just be Denis, right? Sonny will talk about it as well. But Martinez not only has gained the confidence of the coaching staff, but is playing in a very different way. He's playing more vertical. He's trying to find lanes. He's trying to find pockets where he wasn't before. Last year, he was basically trying to do the wing thing, right? Which we've seen before with LAFC. So, rate his season so far. Are we seeing the best of him? And what do you think that is a credit to? Is this a Marc Dos Santos move? Something we heard on his interview.
I think it is Marc Dos Santos. I think with a young Latin American player, you need to give him confidence and you need to give him freedom. especially as an attacker. I don't think he was limited, in his academy phase in Venezuela. I don't think there was much restraint on what he was supposed to do. And I think Dolo tried, giving him just 2 or 3 tasks, or just 2 or 3 ways to attack, 2 or 3 lanes to attack. And I don't think he felt as comfortable. And then when he wouldn't do a good job, I think Dolo would just look the other way and not play him, which would just mentally, chip at him. Because he scored a goal against Miami and he didn't celebrate. So I think he has a chip on his shoulder. I think he's not fully there yet. He's improved a lot, but I think he knows he can give an extra gear. And he's stated that Marc is giving him the confidence. And even when he was under Dolo, Marc was the coach, to talk to him, to keep his head up. So I think it's confidence, it's a chip on his shoulder, and tactical freedom. He can invert himself if he wants to. He can go in behind the line of defenders, or he can check in. He's able to be free and do what he wants with the ball. So when players again have confidence, which this team is thriving with, good things are going to happen.
It's all coming together. So, if the injury bug doesn't bite us early in the season, because, at some point someone is going to go down. It's part of it. That's why you have a deep roster. But if we continue with this consistency, CCL or bust, I do believe we have a good chance to go to a final. Now, it's not going to be easy. There's, probably 2 Liga MX teams and Inter Miami on our way. But maybe this is the year that LAFC goes after the CCL or gets that push and we get that trophy added to our cabin. It would be, to me, the most important trophy in the club's history. But really, for a World Cup year, for everything that we've done and the players that we brought in, it would really solidify the work and everything that LAFC has stood for in this few years that it's been here in LA in the soccer scene. 2 names that we have to talk about. Now, we talked about some of these bigger names, but in the context of the 2-0 win against Houston, we have to talk about Steven Elstakio and what he's been for LAFC. Impressive player. I didn't know much about him, but I knew he was smooth. But I only saw him playing in CONCACAF. I know he's played in Liga MX as well. What is your first impressions of Steven, and overall, what do you think of him as a player?
Like you said, I watched Liga MX, so I knew who he was. He played for Cruz Azul. He had a bad injury. But when he was in Liga MX, he controlled the midfield. He's always been the pillar 6. He's the best version of Igor and the best version of Ilie combined. I think he has that maturity defensively that Ilie always gave us, to be that anchor in front of the center backs. And I think he's young enough to progress and play out that Igor was getting to. So I think he's the best version of those 2 players in that position.
So you see, I'm going to just pause you here. What you're seeing here on the right, and I know it's kind of hard a little bit, maybe if I can zoom in a bit, but you can see sort of the heat maps of both players. Igor Jesus on the right, obviously he's going to be denser. He's got more data, right? But then you said Steven Elstakio on the left, right? So a couple things to me already come to mind. First off, his price. It's not going to be cheap to keep this guy, and he's looking the part, right? So how do you pass on a short-term loan that is going to basically end in the middle of the season? So I'm already worried about the price and what's going to cost, and we'll likely have to move players in order to afford him, right? Igor Jesus perhaps being one of them. But the other thing that I do believe is, look how much more efficient he is with his control. On the left, you see how much more sparse the ball movement is. With Igor, he's everywhere, which at times put him out of position. So you could see the discipline with Elstakio, and yet how effective he's been. He's been one of the best players for LAFC. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you have to do your best to keep him. And if you can't keep him, then it is CCL or bust. If he's there up until the end of CCL, that should be the main tournament to get to. It's his experience. He plays in Canada. He knows what it's like to go down to Central America. He knows what it's like to go against Mexico. That's going to be huge in the later rounds of CCL, or in this next round against Alajuelense, because they're rested. And then we have to go to Mexico if we pass that. That's not going to phase him. And especially, as you said, a disciplined figure that's only going to help elevate us defensively and give the guys up top that, calmness on the ball and not have them, be stressed if they lose it because we can't defend. He's
Big
that
fan.
pillar. Yeah,
I'm
I'm a
a
big,
big fan.
yeah,
I mean, I someone in the on the chat last week was like, you can't get a jersey for a player that is on loan. I'm like, why not? He's one of
yeah,
the coolest players we've had.
yeah,
He's unbelievable. I'd much rather have an Elstakio jersey than a Gareth Bale jersey, and that's just me,
yeah.
right? That's just kind of how the kind of player that he is and elevates the team. So I hope we find a long term solution for him. Now it seems like there's a little bit of an injury bug concern there, right? He's maybe the kind of guy that can go down.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the other side of the coin based on what you said there.
But he's happy to be here. It's his words. He needed this more than we needed him, which
That's
is
a good argument.
surprising. So, he said that. So I think he's just happy to be on the field. And he's also playing for a World Cup. I don't think his spot on the Canadian national team is at risk, but he's going to push himself and prepare himself the best he can to, perform in the summer.
There is Juan Pablo Márquez, 20 minutes already in our show. Thank you so much for doing this with me. Shout out for everybody. A good Juan, the other Juan, is on our chat, and he's always a fun guy. One day I'll have you here on the show, man. I think you have things to say. You have to say
the
some
memes
things.
are back, and we love
I
those
know.
memes.
If anything, I will just ask about the memes. That's
Yeah.
all I'm gonna do. Just ask me, hey, what did you think when you created this meme or that meme? All right. What last analysis? All right. It's really the kind of the whole team analysis, right? So if you were to look at LAFC and just think about what they're doing today versus what they were doing under Dolo, again, I see. Again, it's almost like in football right now, everyone is assigned a zone, whereas in Dolo's system, everyone was assigned a lane. So it was much more lane driven. Whereas now we're looking for basically pockets and everyone's basically sitting on these pockets. What are you seeing collectively from a team organization? Again, I know we have limited data here. I know that some of the games, like we haven't been able to watch that. It's because our lives are crazy. But what are you seeing organizationally that is hinting, oh, this LAFC is different from what we've seen? Erik thinks it reminds him of Bob Bradley's system in a way.
I think it's attacking the half spaces. When there's a half space in between, the middle and the center backs, who's going to check in? And then whoever checks in, it triggers other things. If David Martinez inverts himself into the half space, then Palencia has the full wing, or Son has the ability to run in behind. Or when Son checks in, that means Denis and Martinez have open lanes in behind the defenders because Son is going to drag one or two defenders because you have to mark Son. So I think it's attacking the half space and who's in the half space and what that triggers. If Tim Tillman's in the half space or Marc Delgado's in the half space, then all three have a bit more fluidity up top. So I think that's just the biggest difference. And the team looks fun. The team looks fun. It's a fun team to watch again. With Dolo, the first 2 years, it was we score a goal in the first half or tied at first half, and then we knew we were a second half team, and they would turn it on. But during the last 2 years, it kind of slowed down because teams just said, as long as we don't give them space and behind and sit back, they're not going to be able to break this down. And we were just never able to figure it out. And now with Marc in 4 games, we've been able to at least look better and more dangerous attacking a low block because
and look at the examples, right? Maybe it's not quality. There's no quantity yet, but like there's quality in what has happened. One, LAFC was able to beat Inter Miami soundly at home, and that means a lot. It's not every day you could do that, like the way we dismantled that team. You saw what they did to Orlando too. You go and you completely destroy a team on the road that has organization and history in Real España. That is not easy to do. I really like that. And now you go to Texas. Yes, it's not in the middle of the heat, but you play Ben Olsen, which has had Steve Cherundolo in his back pocket for as long as Cherundolo has been here, at least in Texas. I would say that. And we basically come out of there with a 2-0 win and really not a lot to feel concerned about, right? Now, we'll talk about the red card because that was, of course, the big controversy of the game. But before that, I want to talk about Sonny and his role, especially in these last 2 games, the MLS games, and what he's been doing and compared to the year that he's arrived. So again, I will as you talk, I'll bring up the heat maps of 2025 and 26. But to me, he's much more of the facilitator now. He's playing the 10 role, which is not very good when you think about the number of goals that he was scoring last year.
Yeah.
So is he now sort of the facilitator and not necessarily the guy that's going to take the most shots at goal, right? Do you see that difference yet?
I think last year it was, if we can find space in behind, use it and exploit it. And I think teams are always going to do that. And last year that was the case. Denis and Son, teams just didn't know how to prepare for that because he came in mid-season. So that's when they flourished. Now they know that they should sit back, on Son, but Son is, to me, playing a false nine. He's always checking in build-up. He's always checking in. He's always dragging those defenders out so that Denis and Martinez have a bit more space or a bit more of a 1v1 matchup down those wings. And it frees up the rest of the team. I don't see Son fully comfortable in his new role. I think there's moments of frustration where he, not that he doesn't know how to play it, but he's not the most comfortable. It's not his natural position. He didn't grow up playing it. So he's not, fully happy at times. But he's a team player. He's a true professional. And I feel like there are times where he's at the top of the box where players just don't play that ball back to him because he's ready for that strike, that curler into the back of the post, into the back of the net. So they haven't found that. They haven't been able to unlock that pass yet because he's always ready. There's been 3 or 4 times where he gets upset because they don't pass him back the ball at the top of the box or at the penalty spot. But yeah, it's a new role, like you said. I mean, he's also aging. He can't
33, man.
Yeah, he can't do those runs all season.
Right.
He is the trigger of press. He is always going to press the goalie and everything. But when we're building up, he's always going to check in and be in that false nine.
Yeah. I saw a stat. He ran about 3 miles per half. So 6-mile game for him. It's taxing. He's not a static player at all. And as you saw it on the right side, you see the data on the right side much more complete. Of course, we have a lot more, but you see more width already. How wide he was playing, trying to explore every single part. Again, Cherundolo really gave their players a lot of this, vertical axle mobility that we're not seeing. LAFC, to me now, very vertical and narrow team, and is only using the sides on the field when it needs to. And you can see that in how Sonny is distributed. The only red you're seeing in 2026, it's on top of the box. And that's where he's operating right now. Will he move to the left a little bit and sort of infringe in where Denis Bouanga likes to play? That's been the question, right? How do you get these two guys to play together since Bouanga is so dominant on the left side? Now, we haven't seen the inversions yet, right? Remember like how Bob used to invert the guys like 20 minutes in the game, and I'm like, wait, now you're on this side, and Vela would go to the other side. We haven't seen that yet. What if we're gonna have that or not, man?
No, in 2022 we saw that too with Chicho, Vela, and Bouanga or B-Rod. They would all switch. So if we see that also would be another way to unlock defenses, because you forget who's on your side because they're inverting themselves that much.
So it was not Sonny's most stellar game. He had a couple big chances. He made Jonathan Bond look amazing, and Jonathan Bond is not amazing. And you saw on the 2 goals that were good shots, but Donnarumma it stops that, in my opinion, right? And he's one of the best goalkeepers in the world. So I think Jonathan Bond struggles with low balls like that. And we scored 2 of the same goal, but Sonny had some 101s he missed, and he had open guys on the left, and he forgot to pass to. So overall, before we kind of move on here, what did you think of the game, the 2-0 win? And of course, the biggest question, which I will pose to anybody that is listening, what did you think of the red card on Antonio Carlos, and whether you think Sonny's getting a little bit of the star treatment, right? Which is not necessarily a bad thing. How did you read that situation?
I think it's up to the ref. It's up to the ref.
Yeah, of course.
If the ref gave a yellow, then I don't think no LAFC fan would have said, "Oh my God, wow," it would have been a red. I don't think we would have been upset. But the ball's gone, and you step on a player's ankle. You can't do that. You can't do that, especially in this VAR era. You can't get away with that. Granted, VAR wasn't called. He saw it, firsthand. But, if there was a call or a play that an LAFC defender did that, to Guilherme, and our player only got a yellow card, then I would say, okay, maybe we did get a bit of a star treatment, but no Houston fan can circle or tell us a play like that. So it's not like LAFC got the better end of the referee's treatment. We just were a bit smarter defending. Yeah, I mean, you could.
Do
say
you still think
treatment.
that these guys deserve that treatment, right? Like, do you think Messi, if like you clip Messi versus you clip Antonio Carlos, right? Let's say it's the opposite. Sonny kind of steps on Antonio Carlos late. Would you have given Sonny a red card for stepping on a 6'2" tall defender?
Well, that's the ref's job to be fair to both teams, So yeah, I mean, if you would have given,
you're gonna be political with me. Come on, give me an answer.
If you would have given us
I think they should. I think they should be. I think
they should too.
There has to be preferential treatment. Yeah, of course.
The Inter
Just
Miami
like Shaq
game,
never got free throws when he went to the line. I'm not gonna call foul on you. You're like a monster. You could beat anybody up. We're not gonna call fouls on you. You're horrible on the free throw, anyways. I'm playing, of course, but I think not every player is same, right? And at the same time, like you said, if the ref chose that and it's within the rules of the book, right? He's not getting suspended today.
Yeah.
Right. It is what it is. But I'd like to hear from some people over here. Anybody wants to, have an opinion here? Was this a red, not a red? I don't know. Drop your comment there. If not, that's okay too. I think this story kind of has been beat up to the ground a little bit. But I thought it was an interesting dialogue about whether you have a duty to protect some of these guys. And if they get beat up too much, right? Was there something maybe that the ref saw in terms of, hey, this is the third time they're coming hard at him. They're targeting him collectively. So I'm going to send a strong signal. I think if that was the case, right? If everybody was singling him out, which it can happen, especially with Brazilian players, maybe it renders a red card. But it took the entire air out of the stadium. It changed the context of the game, and it made LAFC much more comfortable to get that first goal. We'll take it, right? Yeah. I felt like I felt like they were going to give us a red card in the second half, which didn't happen. But it is what it is. 3 points on the road, baby, and LAFC leads. Marc Dos Santos is a 3-point per game, perfect 4-0. All right, we're almost out of here. The new format is about 30 minutes long. I just wanted to last thoughts with you, JP. Thank you again for doing this with me. And, chat, if you have any questions, send them out. We're going to be getting out of here soon, but the season is underway. We now have had a couple of games. Who looked impressive to you outside of LAFC? Who are you concerned with that you weren't? How do you think the Galaxy is looking with João Klaus now scoring goals? Talk to me a little bit about the league overall and what you're seeing out there.
I think it's fun to see everyone again. You miss MLS a little. You miss seeing team dynamics, coaches, players. You miss that. I think Cincinnati is not as strong as people had put them. Evander goes down.
Evander's down, yeah, it's tough. Yeah, so, not Evander, they're not as good.
So if your DPs don't hit and if your DPs aren't playing, it's gonna be a drag. San Jose is looking a little promising, a lot better than people expected. Timo Werner goes in, gives an assist. So it's Timo time, and we'll see how they can get him another piece maybe in the summer, a piece or two, because they let go of Christian Espinoza over paperwork. So that's embarrassing.
It looks like it may work out for them because Espinoza, he's a good guy, but
the Galaxy will get better. I think you can't bring Mark Glesnes and Jonathan Hack and not get better. I don't expect
Omar believes they're fluke. And Klaus was a DP at St. Louis and someone that is gelling really well with Gabriel Pack. I'm actually excited for the Tráfico because I miss that energy. I feel like last year we didn't really have much of it because the Galaxy had been so bad. And, when the two teams are good, man, they go at it, it's one of the best games in football to watch. So I'm excited to see this new formula. And there's still my biggest question mark. I think they're
Yeah.
going to be all right. I think they're going to make the playoffs. Are they going to fight for a title? I don't know. Vegas doesn't believe so.
They'll be 4, 5,
Um,
or 6. I don't see them getting anything above.
yeah, I think they're kind of us last year.
Yeah.
They're kind of like forming, could surprise, could get hot, but if Pucci is not coming back at all, right, and this is the roster that they're going to have, I think LAFC wins 2 out of 3, if not 3 out of 4 games. How many times we played them this year? And lastly, we'll see if they bring another Brazilian, the Vasco guy, man.
Coutinho.
We're looking at him, and I forgot his name now, but
Felipe Coutinho.
Yes, Philippe Coutinho, former Liverpool player. I mean, it would be interesting to see him here because MLS, but a little bit of a shock hour, as I like to say. And
could be another.
What
Douglas
do you know?
Costa.
Carson's suddenly a Brazil team, and I'm like, no, I'm not going over there. I'm not covering that, man. It's too far. It's too much. There's so many Brazilians. Well, we all have Zoom. Get in the Zoom, guys. Shout out to my territorial buddies. They do a good job, even though you LFC fans don't like them. I know. All right, JP. Thanks so much, man. It's been it's good 35 minutes with you, buddy. Where are you active? What are you doing these days? Again, I appreciate you doing this for me, but where can people find you?
JP_Marquez 20. I'm teaching. I'm student teaching now, so that takes up my mornings. And my weekends are at my other job because I have to still pay for school. So, I'm a bit busy right now. Once I get my credential, my schedule will open up and maybe come back to covering the team a bit more and a bit more in depth. But it was great. The team looks fun. I think that's a breath of fresh air, and I think fans are seeing it slowly but surely. And once Son fully gets back into it, because he did have half of the preseason or whatever limited preseason he had, we'll be back, and the team will really be dangerous.
By the way, everyone thought it was a red, and I agree with you. Once he's up and running in all cylinders, and we figure out where everybody needs to play, and Jacob Scheffelberg, which is one of my favorite MLS roots players that I've seen play against us, is going. There's going to be a lot of excitement. We talked about some of the guys that may be left out, right? And it could be Nathan Ordaz. Maybe Igor Jesus gets moved, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do so. I think you can get really good value for Igor in Brazil once he's rehabbed. Maybe stay here another season, get some minutes under Elstakio. I like the idea of keeping Elstakio until the end of the year. Just keep the loan going. There's really just an extension there. And then we make a decision next year. So there's so much that we can do with this roster, so many ways we can tweak it. And again, the sky's the limit. And we really hope that these next few weeks will give us some joy in terms of moving on in the CCL, getting some wins against Liga and Mackey's teams. There's so much that it's going to happen. But for now, the team is off, I believe, today and tomorrow.
Yeah,
so no Continental games, right? And this weekend, we will have the BMO Stadium game, the first BMO Stadium game in MLS. That will be against Dallas. We'll break that game down. Maybe not. I don't know. Of course, we're operating a little bit handicapped here with Erik being out. But again, JP, really appreciate you doing this for me. Appreciate the chat once again and everybody that contributed. Henry, your comments have been on point. I really like everything you said. And yeah, that's crazy, man. That's crazy. But Gabriel Pack has been excellent. And the last El Tráfico, he scored 2 goals on us. So he's been doing his part. You cannot underestimate that dude. He's hungry. He wants to move abroad as well. So he's going to give us our best. So with that, thank you again, JP. Thank you again, everybody. And we'll see you sometime soon. I don't know when. Maybe this week, maybe next. See you later.